Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I'm the author of the young adult fantasy Firian Rising, and this is English Nerd. So, man, my voice is a little rusty. I haven't been talking as much as I normally do, so I should be able to make it through this video, however. So grab something, grab a coffee, grab a tea, and today is going to be sort of an informal video. I asked people to let me know what their questions were about writing and self-publishing, and I got several good questions back. I haven't really thought about the answers too much ahead of time, so this will be kind of off the cuff. But since I have the two books out, the first two books of the 10UN Academy series, I figured I was in a position to answer some of those questions. I don't know what the light's doing, by the way. It's just morning light with the window, but apparently it's, I don't know, shadows or something. Okay, so let's start off. So Michael wants to know, how did you find your editors and your designers, since the cover for Into the Unreal is great? Well, thanks Michael. I'm awfully fond of it myself. My editor, I actually only got a professional editor for Firian Rising, not for Into the Unreal, and that was for a couple of reasons, mostly financial, just because a good editor costs a ton of money, and I couldn't really find an editor that was less expensive, since I had multiple books in a series, and for the person to have all the information, I would have to stick with the same editor, I think. But anyway, I found my editor for Firian Rising on Reedsy.com, and I'll put all the links and stuff down below so you can take a look. And my cover designer is Demonza. Demonza did both of my covers. They're a higher end sort of cover service. These were each about $600, which is quite an investment, but I get compliments on these covers all the time. Whenever I do live events where the cover is really prominent, then those actually tend to do really well. So I trust that will eventually pay off. But yeah, Reedsy and Demonza, you can see down below. Okay, so Fox Faye on Instagram says, it'd be nice to see something like a checklist or a timeline of the processes you have to go through, like how to prepare for a successful launch once your book is ready, etc. So I actually have something like that. I have a video that went step by step how to self-publish from when you finish your story to when it actually goes out. I feel like I'm in a strobe light or something. When it actually goes out in print. So that's not necessarily everything you need to do for a launch. It's more the technical, how do you get your story from a computer to this, in stores. And I'll link that video down below. It's, in my opinion, one of my most helpful videos. It really would have helped me out. It's a combination of a ton of information that I learned, different paths you can take. But as far as a successful launch, my two launches were really different. The one for Firian Rising had a lot of fanfare, a lot of, even merchandise and things like that, and live events. But Into the Unreal, since I put it out during the pandemic, was very different. No live events, no, almost no word of mouth. I just kind of posted on Instagram, on Facebook. I ran some Amazon ads for the first book in the series, hoping that there would be some read through to the second. But the second launch was not as grand as the first one. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Okay, so C. Cahill, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, asks, how do you start writing a book and making choices? First person, third person, genre, names, plot. And how do you make yourself write the whole book or make deadlines? Okay, so that's a lot of questions all at once. How do you write? I'll take the last part first, because I think that's the simpler question. So how do you make yourself write the whole book or make deadlines? So the key, I think, to writing a whole book is just the discipline of writing something frequently. It doesn't even need to be every day. It can be most days you write something, even if you know it's not very good. And the way that I put out Firian Rising was I set a publication date, and I planned backward from that, knowing that it would take a few weeks for the cover, a month for beta readers, another month for the editor, and just planned it all backwards. And so I figured out exactly how long it would take me, or how long I had given myself to write and edit. And so I had an idea of how much I had to do. Yeah, it's really more of a discipline. You can't think about the whole book at once, or it'll become overwhelming. All you can do is write, get in the habit of writing, and the more you do that, the more you will speed up in your writing, and you'll just get better by the process of doing it. So yeah, it was kind of convenient. When I wrote Into the Unreal, I didn't think, oh, it has to be exactly as long as the first book, but it ended up being really similar, which is kind of cool. That was not a plan exactly, but yeah, so make deadlines. That's a good way to go, but the most important thing is just to write. And then the other question was how do you start writing a book and making choices? First, third person, genre, names, plot. I assume that if you want to write, then you have at least some of that in place, like you have an idea for a character, an idea for a plot, or something. I have made a whole video about first versus third person, because I think it's a pretty fascinating subject, even though it sounds like it might not be. There are pros and cons to first and third person. First person is more limiting. I've been seeing more and more multi-point of view first person novels, which I had not seen at all growing up, so that's kind of a new option. Personally, I like third person because it gives me a little bit more flexibility to go from one character, I'm talking about Firian, and then the next chapter I'm talking about Kyria, without having to use first person and just be stuck in their heads, I guess. Genre, it's difficult to say. It's like, I'm not going to tell you what genre to choose. I will say, though, you need to choose a genre. Even if it's after you've finished the first draft of a book, figure out what genre it fits into and edit accordingly. You are not the exception to the rule. You're not going to be the breakout star of the genreless book. If you want it to be successful, then it does have to fit certain criteria. Like for Firian Rising, for instance, I originally just wanted it to be fantasy without the YA attached to it, but I figured out that YA was easier to market, and the only thing I really needed to change was the ages of the characters. In the first draft, Firian was going to be about 20 for the majority of the book, and for something to really fit into that YA category, the main character needs to be a little bit younger, so he is now 18 through most of this book. So yeah, make sure that you do choose a genre. And then I have a whole video on names as well. Plot's a much bigger discussion, and so I'll see if there are any questions that come up that are more directed there, because just talking about plot I could take forever, and ain't nobody have time for that. Okay, so moving on to new questions. Amanda asks, what do you find most challenging for self-publishing a series of books? Is it the world building, the characterization, etc.? Actually, characterization and world building I feel is easier if you're writing a series of books, because you don't have to do a whole lot more. You don't need to come up with a new world exactly. You don't need to come up with new characters. You just need to build on what you already have. So that part was kind of simple. The two things that I would say were a little bit more challenging were just keeping the details straight. I've been told by a lot of people to create a series Bible with all the information about different places and people, and I have not done that. because it sounds like an enormous amount of work. But I did have to go back and do, Control F, Control Find for a bunch of just tiny details in Firian Rising, just so they'd be consistent into the Unreal. For a longer series, I'm sure I would need some kind of series Bible, but this one's just going to be 3 books. Maybe I need one anyway, because I know the books I'm going to write after that will be in the same world as well. But yeah, so keeping those details straight down to, eye color and motto and timelines of things, and that's been a little bit of a challenge from time to time, but not too bad. One of the other things is just the commitment. Maybe it's just me, but when I came out with my first book and it says 1 on there, that's a commitment. That's a couple years worth of work that you are committing to do. And then even on the inside flap here, I put join my author newsletter, join her author newsletter to get an exclusive behind the scenes look at Firian's world, which is still true, you totally should. As well as the first news about the sequel to Firian Rising coming out in 2020. So I committed in print to coming out with more than 1 book. And now that I have 1 and 2, and 2 ends on something of a cliffhanger, I've got to put out book 3. So it's the commitment of now I have to. That was a little bit scary, but also good for me. I don't know that I would have done it if I hadn't committed. So yeah, those are the 2 things. All right, Caitlin asks, how long or hard does the process get of self-publishing? That's kind of a sort of a vague question. You like this mug, by the way? Just got it from a coworker the other day. Made me laugh so hard, so you guys get the benefit of checking that out. So I can't say in general how long or hard the process gets, because everyone's self-publishing journey is like vastly different. I've looked at a lot of different authors and it's just completely different. But for me, the process for each of the books took about a year and a half. If you're talking about writing through coming out with the book. So writing, editing, publishing, all of that. About a year and a half of consistent work. So you have to like it. Like, not every day necessarily, but it has to be something that you would do regardless of money or if a lot of people read it. You just have to think, you know what, this is going to be a personal accomplishment for me. I like this story. I will read this story. And that way, if the process is particularly long and difficult, as book 3 is probably going to be, because I'm struggling. I want it to be so good that there's a little bit of this added pressure. Anyway, yeah, so it is a pretty long process. I think if you're doing it right, if you're really spending the time editing, then it's a bit long, but it's worth it. And if you don't think that it's worth it, then maybe this isn't the career or the hobby for you, honestly. Debbie asks, what are your best launch ideas? Okay, best launch ideas. Again, it's different for a lot of people that I've heard from. What worked really well for me were live events. It was the launch party from Firian Rising. I sold tons of books. I had tons of support. I even sold some merch. It was incredible. Every time I've gone to Barnes & Noble, it's been successful. In fact, one of the signings that I did, or more than one, no, I think just one, I completely sold out of all the copies that they had gotten for it, and the copies that I'd brought as well. So live events, I know it's not the most, it's not the best strategy in the long term, because you have to be there and it's time consuming and everything, but that was the best for me because it costs the least amount of money, especially the bookstore signings. The party costs a little bit because I got food and whatever, but it didn't cost that much except for time, and I sold a lot of books in one day. So that has been pretty spectacular. Otherwise, what are my best launch ideas? Yeah, I mean, just making sure that people around you are aware of the book. I try not to be too salesy because I can't stand it if people are like, read this, buy my book, buy my book. It's like, if I want to, I will. Now I know it exists, and, you know, just leave me alone. If I want to read it, I will. And so I want to make sure that everybody's aware of the book. So I did a few things that made people around me just generally aware. Like my phone case is the Firian Rising cover, and I have a mug that's the Firian Rising that I would bring to school every day and have tea. So all my students know about the book, even though I wasn't talking about it very often. I have this shirt too, but I hardly ever wear this shirt. See? I just thought I'd wear it for this since I'm talking about the books. It's like a special event. So yeah, I'm still figuring out what makes a really successful launch because my ads have not been that successful, honestly. Yeah. Oh, and email list. So I have an email list. It's not very big, but I send out an email like every month or so, and I send out a few. Whenever I'm coming out with a book, then I come out with more like one a week and do some giveaways and things like that. Giveaways have been helpful. That's been good. It's cost some money, but that's where I've really gotten people to sign up for the newsletter, and I've gotten some sales from that as well. Okay, Carolyn asks, how much time have you invested in marketing? Have you been satisfied with the return on investment? I've invested a bit of time in marketing, and I'm not super satisfied with the return on investment, to be honest. I've spent a lot of money on Amazon ads, and it has not, I haven't broken even yet. I haven't really gotten close to breaking even. I spend a lot on my book product, you know, getting it up there. Like I said, the cover alone costs like $650. So that plus ad money, I'm trying to find alternate ways to go, honestly, with marketing. As soon as I can do live events again, I'm going to do those, but I'm thinking I'm going to try maybe Apple Books marketing, because I've sold a couple of books through Apple Books and I haven't really done any marketing through them yet, and they just opened up a platform like super recently where you can market your own books on there. Let's see. She goes on, is it worth, do you feel it's worth the effort of DIYing? Given every option, is this the route that you would continue to take? So I DIY'd a few things. I put some stuff on Redbubble, like this. You can go on Redbubble and look up Firian Rising, or Into the Unreeling. There's a bunch of merch, which is awesome. And then I have some promotional things that I DIY'd. So I have, here, I'll show you real fast. Okay, so I have things like this Firian candle. Come on. You can focus. And, you know, things like this, which I don't regret doing in the least. I think that it was really fun. The Curia candles were actually quite popular at my launch, which is nice. I'm thinking about doing a giveaway with the Firian candles, because they smell like pine, but they don't smell like a pine or like a Christmas tree. It was a fine line to walk, and I finally figured it out because I knew what I wanted. Anyway, I'm rambling. I don't regret doing it. I think it was extremely time consuming, and I'm not sure that it was worth the effort necessarily, but it did add some legitimacy to all of my live events, that it wasn't just the books, but that there was some merch. I had a big poster made up, so I bring that to my live events and set it up. One time somebody asked to take a selfie with me, so I think that they thought I was a bigger deal than I actually am. But that's kind of how I like to act. I want to act as though I have a big fan base, and I want to I want to act like I'm a bigger time author, and I think that if I keep that kind of attitude, then it'll eventually come. I'm not surprised that it hasn't yet, but I think there will be a tipping point eventually where all this effort into merchandise and the books and marketing and everything will pay off. I knew it wasn't going to be an overnight thing, and you can't think it's going to be an overnight thing. Very, very few people have any sort of overnight success. Okay, let's see. At what point, so Carolyn asked a lot of good questions. At what point would you consider it worthwhile to choose traditional publishing? Do you feel like you would have to give up control of your story to take the traditional route, or do you feel that you could receive better support to write the story you really want it to be that way? Okay, that's a great question. One of the main reasons that I chose to self-publish is that I wanted the control. I wanted the control of the story. I wanted the control of the cover, of the sales. I wanted control. But honestly, in an ideal world, I would be a hybrid author. So that's self-publishing some books and traditionally publishing others, because of a couple of things. So I still like the control. I still like being able to choose exactly what my books are going to be like and what they're going to look like and everything. But a couple pros to traditional publishing are a sense of legitimacy, which is, a bit misplaced, but there's a sense of legitimacy that bookstores, for instance, see, so it'd be easier to get books into bookstores. It's not that difficult the way that I'm doing it, but so that would be pretty cool. And excuse me, and they pay up front, which is a bit of a double-edged sword. Like if you take off, say you become the next Harry Potter, which I don't anticipate, but let's just say hypothetically you become the next Harry Potter sort of book. If you traditionally publish, then in the long run, like 20 years down the road, you end up making less money. But then if you were self-publishing, then you get a larger percentage 20 years down the road. But you do get paid upfront as opposed to paying a lot upfront. And so I think just cash flow wise, that would be really nice. I'd love to be traditionally published, but I would like to self-publish most of my own books. So we'll see. We'll see. I think I have more control over my story if I self-publish. So there you go, Carolyn. All right, and then the last question is from Nicole, and she asks, do you find that studying classic literature helps with your own writing? So I'm an English teacher, as many of you already know, and I have an English degree. And if you look at my bookshelves, maybe not this one, this is Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, but if you look at maybe one over here, we have Dostoevsky's shelf, we have the classic poetry shelf, we have my Shakespeare shelf right there. So so I study classic literature. I've gotten this question a couple of times actually, and I think it's not that you need a degree or need to study English to be a successful writer. I don't think that one bit, but it has given me an understanding of what good writing is, and it's helped me troubleshoot different things. It's given me a nice vocabulary. It's given me all kinds of references that I can make. So it's, I think that you just benefit as a person if you read some of the greatest works that have ever been written. It gives you a depth of understanding about people. Not that you can't get that elsewhere, but you read Crime and Punishment and the journey with Raskolnikov's guilt, and it just, that's a masterclass in how to write character. So yeah, I think it has been helpful. All right, well, thanks for sticking around, guys. If you have any other questions, I'd love to answer them down below. Until next Monday then. Like this video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe for more English nerdy goodness. All right, bye.